Hello and welcome to my new podcast, the Chiron Creative. I'm Lauren Wilde, your host, and I'm super stoked to have you here. This is episode 01, and I'm beyond excited to have a new, really big creative baby project to work on again. Something that I feel passionate about and clear about and ready to move forward with all my will and all my magic. And I'm just so excited to have you guys here. So, the first thing I want to do in this episode 1 podcast is talk a little bit about myself, the host. What is my mastery? What are my methods? What am I offering? And then also a little bit about myself, my story. So first things first, I want to acknowledge I'm a professional astrologer. I was born to do astrology. I very much see myself similar to the kid in the Olympians movie. It's literally leaving my head right now. Percy Jackson, where he thinks that he's dyslexic and has ADHD, but then finds out later that he is reading Greek. So I'm just that feels like me. I have a photographic memory that is visual. And I have this really weird knack for memorizing people's charts like that, like just really, really fast. And so I was born to be an astrologer. I am a Libra sun, and my sun is in an exact trine to my Jupiter in Aquarius. My Jupiter is exactly conjunct Urania, which is the goddess of astrology. Aquarius also is largely rules astrology in the future. It's visionary. And then my moon is Aries, late Aries, and my rising sign is Sagittarius. So I was born to yap. I was born to be a philosopher and a spiritualist. And also my midheaven is Virgo. And so I tell people all the time, I am an astrologer and I am into the esoteric arts, but I'm pretty functional about it. The goal is to expand your consciousness and to be able to architect a life that you want to live that's off factory settings. So a lot of narrative work, a lot of somatic work, a lot of subconscious reprogramming. And I have spent, the last 15 years of various versions of spiritual leadership, which I'll share a little bit about that here in a minute. But essentially, I have been and am a personal trainer, a 500-hour yoga instructor, a breathwork facilitator, a master facilitator of facilitators. I created a school. I birthed it from literally my imagination and became a 6-figure earner, and consistently. And I'm just super, super passionate about helping people self-realize, to find themselves and begin to reclaim their true nature, their wildness, their softness, whatever their thing is. And I've been historically doing that with normal people that are deconditioning or deconstructing from a high control religion. But this past year, 2024, I really became aware that my work was shifting dramatically into working with leaders, spiritual leaders, and entrepreneurs, and people that were really invested in spiritual businesses and becoming facilitators and learning how to, gain skills in astrology or whatever I'm teaching to help them in their personal practices. And so I really started to recognize that my message, my offerings were starting to change without me even recognizing it, and that my ICA had changed. My ideal client avatar had changed. Who I was talking to had changed, and I was catching up. And so I have spent the last about 8 or 9 months preparing for this pivot, knowing that the South Node is on my midheaven in Virgo right now, that I'm meant to shift the way that you guys see me, my persona, into more of a person of service and functionality, which is very Virgo. And that's what I'm doing. And so what this particular podcast is for, I have 2 podcasts. What this particular podcast is for my fellow wounded healers. And I'm going to talk about the Chiron archetype in length throughout this entire podcast. Right now, I'm just setting the foundation of the major teachings you need to really get the most out of this offer. And this offering, which is this podcast and YouTube channel. But wounded healers. So people that are that find a lot of purpose in helping people navigate their pain, their challenges, their sense of woundedness from their own personal experience with their pain and woundedness. And so that is Chironic people are known as wounded healers. And it's a very like in-depth archetype that's way, way, way down in the human subconscious. And it's tied to the archetype of Chiron, which is a planetary body. It's a comet. And it is what is called the rainbow bridge. It is more of like this liminal space, shamanic perspective, both and, because Chiron was half man, half horse, half of earth, half stars. So there is this polarizing effect and liminal space with Chiron where there's always a duality. There's always a both and so the wounded healer archetype very strongly correlates to, you know, I'm being vulnerable and transparent, and I'm leading from a place of my own woundedness. And this happens a lot to artists. This happens a lot to yoga instructors, therapists. A lot of people are called into their line of sacred work that is in service to healing people with wounds similar to themselves because it's their call. That's who I'm looking for. And to take it even one step further is that are either trying to establish a spiritual entrepreneurial based business, like building your own business, versus working for somebody else. And also the aspect of already established businesses that are wanting to learn astrology, that want to learn how to use different esoteric tools to amplify their skills or to learn their skills for the very first time to make their own work stronger and more clear and to give them more tools to help them with their particular client base. So this particular podcast, my hope and my dream and my intention is that it provides support, guidance, tools, some storytelling so that you guys don't have to learn the hard things that I've had to learn building my business over the last 10, 15 years. And that it helps you and inspires you to stay in the game of being an entrepreneur in this economy and pursuing your dharma, your soul calling, your spiritual work. And everybody has a dharma, but what I'm specifically looking for is the people that have a dharma in being wounded healers, in being right alongside the people that they're working with. Maybe you're just a few steps ahead. And because of that, you have this this vulnerability and this resonance with the people that you're helping because you've been there, right? That's who I'm looking for. So spiritual entrepreneurs, emergent business owners, established business owners, people that are wanting to learn astrology and the esoteric arts. I'm your guide, my friends. I have a program that is built and it's expanding. I'll share about that often because I believe in energetic exchange. I believe that if I'm going to provide, value, that I get an opportunity to provide, my own opportunities if you wanted to work with me or do a program, etc. So that's like the basis of what I'm hoping to offer. Where I want to move next is about me. So I don't know about you guys, but I want to know who I'm learning from. I want to know their vision. I want to know their mission. I want to know their background. I want to know, right? I also really want to know their political standing, and who they are fighting for or not. And those are important things that I definitely want to address. So I have a very clear message and base here. And that is, I came out of high control evangelical Christianity. I did not grow up in it. My parents, we were more like the holiday Christians. We would go for Easter and Christmas and Mother's Day. But other than that, not really. But I didn't know that I was a spiritual seeker until I was about 13. And, I spent most of my life in deep connection to nature. I was raised in Destin, Florida. I was very privileged to grow up on the actual water. Like I could literally walk out my back door about 20 steps and have my feet in water. And I was very, very attuned to nature. And I spent a lot of time in nature building tree houses and forts, and fishing was a big part of my life. Crabbing, all of those things were really important to me. Um, and I think that they really helped me a lot when I was a kid. When I was about 5, I was diagnosed with ADHD. So I've known that I'm neurodivergent since I really was conscious. I always knew I was different. And I have a different kind of neurodivergent ADHD trauma, which is growing up knowing that there's something, and for those of you listening on podcasts, big air quotes, something is wrong with me. I couldn't mask it very well. I tell people all the time, I have the H in ADHD. I have the hyperactivity. I did a lot of sports, a lot of movement. I still need to move a lot. My background is in movement. I'm a personal trainer and a yoga instructor, and I was a big CrossFitter until I got hurt. But movement is a big part of my personal medicine that I utilize a lot to help me digest all of this consciousness, right? This burden of awareness. So I definitely was in that category of thinking that I was the bad kid and something was wrong with me from a very early age. So I would say that a lot of the one of the other niche kind of pieces that I would say is that I think about 75 to 90% of my clientele is either ADHD or on the autism spectrum. I historically have worked with female identified folks. And that's like a nice segue. So I am a huge ally to the LGBTQIA plus community. I am pro women. I am a feminist, but I love men. I am so lucky that I have an amazing partner that supports me, and he's a feminist too. For any of you that are listening that don't know this, feminism is just the belief that we should have equal rights. Shocker, I know, but that's what I believe. And I have historically worked with female identified folks. I am anti-turf. I am not a turf. I am very, very, very open to people being sovereign and living their lives, and me not needing to have an opinion about other people's lives. I teach that a lot, and I stand on business about that, which is who people love is none of my damn business. And what people believe, not my damn business. I've had to do a lot of work around that in the very beginning, where I thought that my life responsibility was to turn people to Jesus. And no, my life responsibility is turn people back towards themselves and their true purpose, and to strip away anything that gets in the way of that. So I'm pretty passionate about that. And I'll share more about that as we progress. But growing up, I was always seeking something bigger than myself. I just didn't know it. I just had no language for it. I didn't understand. So when I was about 13 years old, I got wrapped into church. I had a very short stint with it, but I found purpose in spiritual community, and in leadership. So I was very quickly put in youth leadership. I've always been in leadership positions my whole life. I was president of my school in the 5th grade. Very, very much like, the leadership team captain, whatever captain usually was a captain. But that's one of the things that I've had to learn over the last couple of years as I've been specializing and like really niching down in my work, is that I work with leaders. And there's a difference between leaders, and that is they feel a call and they are in integrity, and they feel this drive to want to protect and to guide and to, provide insight and to protect really the vulnerable. And so I very much associate with that leadership call. That is very much my moon in the 5th house. It is Aries, but it's in the 5th house of Leo. And so I'm here to really help to support and to guide and to help cultivate creative and spiritual leadership. And that happens in ourselves, and also how we take it out into the world to help others. And that's a very Chiron concept, from self to others, right? From our own experience to want to support people. That is a very Chiron experience. So I say all of that to just kind of create some background. So I spent about 10 years in the Christian church. Again, I didn't grow up in it. I got evangelized when I was like 22. I got married, was very much in that high control evangelical cult mind, and thinking that it's my responsibility to save people. And, that it was my job to have babies and to be at home and to homeschool them, and very much living out of alignment with who I am. And in 2015, I had a spontaneous spiritual awakening, aka Kundalini awakening. Uranus went over my moon. And I tell people often I fell through the cracks of my own faith. There is a clear distinction between when Uranus hit my moon the first time and who I was before that. Like I'm very different. And I've never been the same since. And I went through a pretty extensive dark night of the soul, and really had to redefine and deconstruct a lot of very conditioned thinking about women's role in society, about spirituality, about, am I going to hell? Is my heart good? Is my heart bad? Am I a sinner? Am I broken? Like all of that very disempowering, high control religion. And as I did, I shared about it on social media, and I became known as the church witch. And I spent a pretty significant amount of time in my small business teaching witchcraft and, goddess work, astrology, the esoteric arts. All of that is very native to me. And, a lot of people will ask me, are you a Satanist? No, just because somebody practices witchcraft, I'm pagan. I'm very closely tied. I'm an animist. I believe that everything has a spirit. The rocks, the trees. I'm deeply connected to the spirits of my well-line ancestors. I work with the spirits of many different goddesses and hope to embody them. I also still work with Jesus. I tell people all the time, the archetype of Jesus guides me every single day. I've helped more people heal their relationship to Jesus as a priestess than I ever did as a pastor. And I'm really, really still very close to the teachings of Jesus, because I believe he was a revolutionary. I believe he was a visionary, and he was teaching consciousness. And that's why I tell my students a lot, we only teach those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, because Jesus knew about the burden of awareness. He understood that when you understand something, you're now responsible for that awareness. And that is why he taught in parables. So he was a very conscious, very compassionate teacher, but he was teaching metaphysical versus physical material teachings, and growing and expanding their consciousness, because there was an age shift coming. And I mean, I could yap about that all day, but I'm not going to today. But it is important that you guys understand that I came out of high control religion. So I am very, very careful about making sure that there is integrity around, does that resonate for you? Where do you feel that in your body? Like, do you feel free around that? Do you have baggage around that? Do you feel like you are your own? Do you feel sovereign? Do you feel like any of these old teachings or thoughts still have a hold on you or your psyche? Because if they do, you really got to deal with that stuff to build a healthy spiritual business. Otherwise, you'll bleed all over the people that you're working with and that you love, not knowing that those wounds are still there. And we will process that stuff in this podcast. But that deconditioning, that deprogramming, and that call back into spiritual leadership, especially if you came out of a high control religion and you had to get free, and then you're like, I'm agnostic now, or I'm an atheist, but you get called back into mysticism and spirituality because that's kind of who you are. And then you're like, well, what do I do with all this? I tell my students often, the spiritual gifts that you had are exactly the same. You're just reframing them in a way that is more empowering for you. And so, you're learning how to retool and utilize the gifts that you were born with. So Those are just a couple of different things. The other thing is, for people that are seeking wisdom around like, how do I even start a business? I'm really passionate about that. And the creativity aspect that is tied to Chiron, which is, if I did not have my sacred work, I don't know if I would have survived the divorce that I went through. I was able to put so much of my heart and my experience and my vulnerability into my work, and then get to see how it helped other people, which therefore helped me. And we will talk more about Chiron, and I'll share his full myth in our next session. But I didn't grow up in spirituality. Then I became very, very uber spiritual evangelical Christian. And then I had this big spiritual awakening in 2015. And then I just wanted to study everything. So I studied shamanism. I studied witchcraft. I studied paganism. I studied different goddesses, all the way from Lilith and Hecate and Kali. I did 500 hours of yoga teacher training, technically 1,000. And I've sat under many incredible teachers. And like I've studied so much, the Buddhism, all of the things, and I love all of it. I'm very eclectic. But there are just some things that have consistently landed, and that is the connection between the tool that is astrology that brings consciousness, and the bodies, the planets, of how they affect our bodies and create these attunements. And then how do we take care of these things in, what I call Earth School, which is how do we take all of this information and apply it? And I have a saying in my world, which is like, don't tell me shitty news if you're not going to tell me what to do about it. I already have enough things to worry about. Thank you very much. So this podcast is very much about acknowledging, these challenges or these awarenesses that we have as we expand our consciousness and our skills. But it's also about like literal practical steps of like, well, how do I take action, and how do I develop the willpower, and how do I cultivate these practices, to put it into action and even make money doing it. Like that's a big part of it. So that's really and truly like so much of what I've spent, especially the last 7 years doing, is building courses and building programs and raising up like over 100 apprentices, and empowering them to empower themselves, and to teach different teachings. And I feel very clear at this point that I'm ready to move into fully stepping into supporting leaders, spiritual leaders, creatives, entrepreneurs, up level their own consciousness and heal themselves while also healing others, and hopefully making some money doing it along the way. So I'm so grateful to have you guys here. We are going to be chatting about all kinds of things. I'm definitely going to be polling questions from the community, and on my YouTube channel, you'll see where I start doing tarot and astrology. But so much of what my focus is going to be is for career development. So historically, when I'm talking about like, here's the astrology that's coming up, it's like, all right, for all my career individuals, I want you to pay attention to taxes right now because Venus is retrograde and something might fall through. Or, make sure that you try to have a client pay in full because Venus is about to station retrograde. So like things like that, where I'm really trying to drive it towards leaders and creatives, visionaries, and entrepreneurs to be a tool and a resource for you guys. So again, I hope that this was helpful for you, and I can't wait to build out this community, build out this network, and be of support and be in service to the growth of consciousness and healing, because our world literally, it just needs it so much. So please don't give up, and please stay in the game, and take care of yourself. Okay. I will see you guys in episode 2, and I'm all lit up and I'm so excited. So until next time, see ya.